We want to welcome everybody to the Giving Genshai podcast today. I'm Lance Schiffman, and I'm here with one of my dearest friends. Almost 3 decades now, right?
Yeah.
Celeste Edmunds.
Yeah. Wow.
She just finished her book, The Garbage Bag Girl, and we wanted to have her on our podcast for first of the year. And I read this. We're going to go into it in just a few minutes, but well, always. Yeah, that's the first thing I had to do. Get over here.
I know. I'm finding most people need a hug. I've had a long time to work through it.
Especially after reading this, yeah. I haven't processed everything.
Right, I'm going to give you a little bit of time.
That's why we're doing this podcast
we'll process
today.
it together.
But Celeste was in the, I'm just reliving some of the stuff in the book here. So she was in the system at the age of?
The book spans during a brief, but felt like long 3 years of age 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah.
Mostly. And that was when I was officially, so I'm 7 in that picture. And I was taken through the child welfare system and lived in drug rehabilitation centers and with foster families and other family members. Till eventually I was put into an adopted placement.
And for how long was that?
Which the adopted placement was for 9 years. I ran away when I was 15.
30 cities.
I lived about 32 cities, by the time I was 16 when all was said and done. And then I ended up back here in Utah and met my mom now. As you read, the joke was I came for Thanksgiving dinner and never left.
Yes.
Because it was 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. I got dropped off in a big Winnebago, and then I was there for 9 years and toasted the family and said, thank you, this is the longest I've ever been in one family. And my mom, spoiler alert, this is how the book ends, but you kind of need to know there's a happy ending because the first part's hard. I would say don't read it if you're going to sit down and pause. You kind of just want to push through it because you want to get to the other space, but it does have my finding home happily ever after. My mom adopts me as an adult. That's who I call mom today. So every Thanksgiving is very significant. I wouldn't miss it at my mother's house for nothing. It's been 32 years. And she has a line that home's where they have to keep you. And it means that no matter what challenges you give your children give you, no matter what pushback they give you, they never get kicked out of the home. Ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
So currently, tell everyone where you're at right now. You're the executive director of Christmas Box House, right?
Yes. Yep. Christmas
Part of the
Box.
happy ending.
It is, because the stories never end, right? Where you finish writing them, there's always the rest of you. And that was age 26, and now I'm fabulously 50.
We're close. We're close to the same age. And we've been dear friends for 27, 28 years, right? I had started working for Richard Paul Evans, who co-authored the book. Yes.
When he wrote a little book called The Christmas Box.
Fabulous book.
And that was 30 years ago.
Rick
so I think I met him 2 years. I met you 2 years after that.
Yeah.
So it's been 28 years.
Wow. And I did not know 10% of this stuff about you.
Most people know enough to know.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is why she does what she does.
Yeah.
This is why she works for the Christmas Box International. But there are things I wrote in there that I never told anybody until I wrote this book. The two sexual abuse experiences that were pretty traumatic is I never told anybody about because it was part of the don't tell era for sure, and I was still very worried. My sister, who you can't see in this picture, who's holding my hand, looking up at me, my job was to protect her. I was what I thought her mom. And so every decision I made, which most of them I put myself in on purpose, I made a very intentional decision to what I thought was going to save her. So I'd never written about him. So my children are just reading it.
For the first time?
For the first time.
Did you sit down and tell them the stories before?
I did not. I mean, they knew enough, probably as much as anybody else, and they've heard me speak a lot, so they knew some. But my youngest is the only one that's really fully read it. She's almost 19. And I came home last week, and she was just like snot crying, sobbing. Eyes were so red, and I knew right when I walked in her room she was holding it. And I just put my hand on her, and I was like, honey, you okay? Do you want to talk about it? And she just, I wasn't sure what she was going to say. And I said, you just have a little bit left. Do you want to finish reading it? And then we can talk about it. And she said, she just kept crying, and she said, I just want you to know I'm so proud of you. Yeah. And I'm so grateful you're my mom.
Wow.
And she finished the story, and then she came out of her bedroom still crying, and she said, I'm going to be right back. And she left, and she came back, and she walked in the house, and she had a bag of Funyuns and a bottle of chocolate milk. She went to the
I read that.
down the street. So when you read the book, you'll know why that's significant. And she sat at the kitchen. We have a bar at the kitchen, and she sat next to me and held my right hand while we ate the bag of Funyuns and chocolate milk. And it was the best bag of Funyuns I've ever had in my whole life. Wow. And she just cried, and I cried, and she just kind of wanted me to know she heard me. She heard the story. She heard the message. And she said, you're such a badass. I'm so proud of you.
You are.
I was like,
no, you are.
If nothing else, thank you. Like, to have your child say that, to recognize this part of you, because I was worried. It's very graphic in certain places. And I thought, man, what do you do when your kids know like that much detail about you? And do they have an image of you? And are they worried now? And I worried about friends and family. Are they going to coddle me different? Are they going to treat? Is anyone going to feel sorry for me? I mean, I just had to kind of work through. When it was time to push it out 3 weeks ago, I kind of had a real deep process that had to happen.
Like you're going to be tagged with this.
Yeah, I just didn't want people to treat me differently. Yeah. I just really didn't. I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me. I'm okay. I mean, I've had a lot of therapy, and I've done a lot of processing, and my life is great.
People would never know. I mean, with where you're at right now, and when we hang out, I mean, over the last...
You don't think, man, she's just filled with trauma.
What is wrong with this girl? You know, I've never thought that about you. And I actually called my mom today, and I said that we were doing this podcast, and my mom, you're one of her heroes.
Yeah, I love your mother,
She says that. She says, Celeste is one of my heroes. She says, especially after I read the book.
She called me crying after.
Oh, no, she called me too. And she's like, I don't know if you want to be reading that. I'll just tell you. I said, no, I'm reading the book. I said, for sure. And, yeah, and she said, I said, Mom, what was the one question that you'd want to ask Celeste? And she said, how did she find the hope and the promise that things were going to be better at such a young age? Because you had to have something built inside of you that you knew intuitively that it was going to get better, even with all of the horrific things that you experienced.
I don't know if I knew it would, or if I just knew that my main focus was to keep my sister safe, which is why every time there came those moments where she was going to be taken from me, and then ultimately I definitely didn't see her. Yep. I was just so certain I failed her, and I failed everything that I was supposed to be doing.
Is that when they took him from the home, when you guys were separated?
Yeah, they eventually, took us. So I went to Detroit, Michigan with them, and then I went to New York with my mom, and then my mom called me in the room and said, hey, your brother and sister were really sent to Salt Lake to be adopted, and she had said that we were all going to be reunited. So I got told that wasn't going to happen, and that she said they'd been adopted into another family. So I come back to Salt Lake. I have the chapter with my dad that was single-handedly next to the bowling chapter, the hardest for me to write of the whole book.
Yeah.
And said goodbye to him, and got all my gifts from him, including my Funyuns and chocolate milk. And then I went into the Hat family and was told I was a Christmas present. But I was so lucky, because when you're an older child, first of all, when you reach the age of 4, your chances of being adopted drop 50%. Most people wouldn't like an infant, understandably so. But by the age of 4, wow. I mean, you have stuff, you have baggage, and a lot of families don't want to bring that into their home. So there's a big waiting list for kids. And at the time, now it's a little more systematic, but still not great. But at the time, you'd go to these adoption parties as a foster child, and you'd have these thick, like 3 or 4 inch binders placed all over these coffee tables. And you had a picture and a bio and what made you cool. And you just walked around and met prospective families and hope that you'd be picked out. So there was just more of a reminder of, I hope I get picked. And then, so when I got chosen by the Hatt family, it was...
and what age were you at that point?
So I was 8.
Yeah.
And I was told, you are so lucky. Nobody wants older kids. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'm going to do this farm thing. I'm going to move onto this farm and learn how to build some stuff. And I was I was always optimistic, oddly. I'm not really sure where that came from, but I was very optimistic always. And so I did see a little hope in that, like, okay, this family, I'm not going to see my brother and sister, but I'm going to have this family. And then it just came fast. It's kind of a Flowers in the Attic, if anybody's ever seen that kind of weird show.
Absolutely.
Where Kathy just became very mind controlling, and she wanted me to know always I wasn't her biological child, but I still had to call her mom, or then I wasn't being appreciative. And she just had this weird constant control thing, and I just never knew where I was. And then they decide, well, we'll keep her. Why not? She wasn't Buffy. Buffy was the one they wanted in the book. You read about Buffy.
The original.
Dana and my sister threw a fit. I wasn't Buffy, but they picked me, and I got to be adopted. And the whole way to the adoption, to the courthouse, my siblings are in the car like, we're just going to tell them we don't want you, and no matter what, this doesn't make you our family anyway. And I was like, oh, please tell them you don't want me. This will be so great. And instead, I walk into the courthouse, and the caseworker... so I don't think I'm going to see my brother and sister ever again. I never got to say goodbye. I walk into this courthouse downtown Salt Lake, and the caseworkers thought it would be so awesome to set us up to be adopted on the same day. So I say hi to my siblings.
I know, I read that.
Right? It's a surprise, and I'm like, I get to see them. And I mean, I remember the church clothes they had on because they were raised by the
I had
church.
like tons of hope there too. Like, oh, they're all together again. Here we go.
It's that total moment running down those marble floors.
Drop the hammer.
And the caseworker looks at me like, oh, I messed up so bad. I just meant, surprise, I'm adopting you on the same day. But we thought we were going to be adopted. It was a surprise. You're all adopted together. And it wasn't. So we said hi and goodbye at the same exact moment. And my little brother, I hadn't seen him for like a year. And he totally looks up and he was like, Sissy. I was like, see you, buddy. Sorry. And they changed his name. His name, he was born Austin. They changed it to Tommy, so it matched all the T's in the family. Whole other story. And so I say goodbye, and it was super traumatic. And then I just remember sitting in the car. I was like, yes, sir, to the judge. Yes, I know I'll have another name. I know, yes, I'm lucky. I'm so lucky to be here. I'm so lucky. And I just went home and thought, I don't even have anything. It was the first time I actually felt hopeless. Like, I remember thinking, something's going to pan out. Something's going to pan out. I don't know what it's going to look like. And then I got adopted. It was age 9. And it was hopeless. And the last thing I had to hold on to was the idea of God. And that's where the church I was involved in, the whole thing played out. Going to the social services that they were affiliated with and getting mind tricked there, and then getting baptized in their temple and having that thrown at me that I was going to be sealed to this family forever. And I was like...
And this is the family that you were experiencing. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, not only on this earth, like today I have to be in this family, but
forever.
I'm going to die, and I like have to stay attached to this family for...
And at this point you're, what, 9?
Yeah, but forever was like...
So you haven't consciously went into...
And I think the reason it was even more impactful is because... I had a guide that I could never explain, that other than it being my higher power. Every awful experience I had in the book, I had a left hand on my. I had a hand on my left shoulder.
Wow.
Always present, and I always had a very calm. That no matter what, I wasn't going to die. Something was going to happen. I'd be okay, and I'd continue on. And so when that all transpired, and that concept of whatever this God looked like crashed any illusion that there was a safety for me. I didn't know what that meant. And I thought I just made it all up in my head, that there was no spiritual anything guiding me. I was not safe. And that's when I rockered out.
That was probably your lowest moment at that point?
When I was 9. From the time I was 9 to 15, I just started plotting how I would either kill my adopted mom, literally, or she would just kill me, and it would just be an end, and that's okay. And I just continued till I was 15, and then I officially ran away when Jennifer, that you meet in the book, carries me over her shoulder, hauls me down the road, takes me to her home, and then I started on a path of meeting these, every 6 months, these amazing humans that would just miraculously say, you can live with me. And I was never longer than 6 months, but it was kind of a moment of picking me up.
Is that how the system works?
Well, I was out of the system then. I was just running away.
But you age out at 16, right?
It would have been 18, but I ran away from that adoptive house.
Okay.
And just happened to find a family that would take me in for about 6 months. And then I'd get kicked out again, put all my stuff in my garbage sack. I'd go to the next place. But the point is, somebody kept taking me, and it was illegal for them to do that. You're harboring a minor. But somebody kept doing it. Like, those are the people on the way that are kind of my guardian angels that stepped in,
And then
right?
you had the one friend that took you in but didn't tell the people that you were staying. Is that right?
So
you were just coming for one weekend.
That's who ended up adopting me. That's the family. She said, Mom, I have a friend that's going to come back for the weekend. Yeah. And her sister only knew me as, her older sister only knew me as Trouble. And I walk across the lawn, and she stared at me like, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm coming to stay. And 2 months later, Carly, my mom, said, you can stay here. Home. Wow. She says, home's where they have to keep you. And I was like, that's not really a thing, kind of though. Harsh words, huh? Yeah, I was like, I don't really know what that means. I can go get my garbage bag and move out. And she said, and I dropped out of high school, the whole thing. And she said, but you will get your but more colorful words back in school. Yeah. And she made me re-enroll and finish school, and it was a really big deal. And then I was adopted at age 26.
By her? By her.
She sent out baby invitations. It's not in the book, but it's pretty cute because my family's very celebratory. Yeah. She sent out baby invitations that she adopted a 126-pound, that was a long time ago, 5'6", baby girl. I show up at the house, and there's pink everything. I don't even love pink, but it was just very symbolic. Yeah. Little booties on cake, the whole thing. 225 people end up coming because it becomes this media thing.
That's incredible.
And then, most special thing, I'd never seen a picture of me as a baby, and my family found a slide from my biological family when they used to take pictures on slides, and I was 8 months old, and it was blown up on an easel.
Wow, what did you do when you saw that?
Just what I'm doing right now.
I know.
Yeah, I was like, I was a baby. It was just kind of this, because when we did this book, I only had 2 pictures of me as a child, so I was like, do you want this one or this one? There's only 2. And so yeah, just to see myself as a baby, it's like, obviously I knew I was one, but I don't have any stuff as a child. I don't have books. I don't have, and everything I had was thrown away.
Yeah, what was your fondest memory in your childhood? I know when everybody reads this book, they're going to experience
it was
some pretty dramatic.
So I don't remember celebrating any holidays. I don't remember celebrating birthdays. Nothing was a wow factor. And so I think it's why the last visit I got with my dad, he made such a big deal over, I'm going to wrap all these little presents, and I'm going to celebrate all these holidays one time with you, so you get him. We went to the baseball game. That was our favorite thing to do, was a live baseball game. Yep. He played guitar, so that's why there was guitar music at my book launch. Yep. So he would always do, all those symbolic things, and of course Funyuns and chocolate milk was my favorite treat. Who knows even why that's a thing. But so I got all that, and so that was my favorite memory, is just spending time with my dad. He was the only one that made me feel normal.
But after he left that day, did you immediately drop back into despair? Or was it
not yet?
Or did you use that day to kind of propel you into?
Well, yeah, because I'd been told that when you're 18, you can go find your parents.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, one day I'll be 18, I'll be big, and I'll wait for my sister to turn 18, I'll be 20, and then we'll go do it together. And I just kept thinking there would be this reunification thing. And then when the experience with the therapist, where she lied and said my mom never really wanted to see me again, and then I had all my stuff destroyed, and just all those things one after the other. It was like all the little symbolisms of maybe one day. My hope was that one day I would reunify with my biological family. Yeah. Because I knew them. I was older. Yeah. It's not like I was a baby and I didn't know them. So I wanted so much to reconnect with them, and all those little things that got taken away from me was a reminder that I was this. just garbage that somebody could just keep disposing.
And you guys have reunited.
My biological family and I have, and yes, we have, and my father has passed. I do have a biological mother that lives in Utah that I keep in touch with writing only.
Yeah.
I have a sister. My sister I do keep in touch with still. She was a thing.
And your brother?
My brother I don't. He struggles. He looks the most like me, and he's freaking hilarious when he's sober. But he really struggles with addiction, unfortunately. And ironically, he spent the least amount of time around it. So we were all born addicts, and I was the first, my sister the second, and he was the third. And each baby was worse. My mom used more, and so I have a titch of it. Anything that I take in goes a long way. My sister's heightened level more, and my brother, it's really bad. And even though he was 2 when he was adopted, and he spent nearly no time with my father, he drinks and chooses the exact same. It shows you how chemical and how addiction is really real and very strong. Yeah. But he also uses it as an excuse to, he makes jokes like father, like son. Yeah. For him, it's also something that allows him to get to make those decisions. And my path veered extremely the other direction.
It's interesting, that programming that happens, right? Yeah. Like you said, like father, like son.
But we all have our thing, right? Like he chooses chemical. Yeah. I chose unhealthy relationships. We all have a path of destruction that we probably go down, or a level of an addiction that's not healthy. I just think it looks different. It manifests differently.
So how have you been able to break that cycle so that it doesn't continue on?
Well, I would say everyone should write their story. I don't think everyone should publish it. That's to each his own. Yeah. But I think when you write your story and you write out, because everybody has their stuff. And mine isn't worse than yours.
Yeah. When I called you, remember?
Yeah.
I'm like, Celeste, I had no idea. And then you were saying, listen, you've had yours. And it's probably just
what
as
happens?
significant
Everybody
what
discounts
you felt.
it. They'll say, it wasn't as bad as yours.
Well, that's what I was doing, remember? And you're like, hey, listen, you have your own stuff too.
And what I've learned through trauma therapy, which is the other way, is when I started writing the book, I decided to get a very good trauma therapist. And I also went down my own spiritual path of realizing that what I was taught was wrong. I was taught through religious systems, but I didn't believe in something more than myself because I allowed those people and those institutions to take that from me, and I knew it still existed. Yep. And you remember reaching out.
Yes, I did.
And you didn't know why, but you knew you were supposed to.
Well,
and you said, I have a ticket for you.
When we were pulling our little event together down in St. George, you came to me as strong as anybody.
And I hadn't seen you for probably 5 years.
I know. We talk and stuff, but I was just like,
so you sent me you sent me a text and you're like, you have to come. And I remember thinking, I have to move my daughter, and I have all the reasons you don't do things. And interestingly enough, so I had separated from a very toxic marriage in April. You sent me sometime in end of May, first part of June, and said come down and do this retreat. And I was heading for a book retreat to write my book as well.
I remember.
So I was like, I just have a lot going on. But one of the things I decided was this concept of surrendering. I knew I needed to find my spiritual path. I just didn't know what it was going to look like. But I knew if I was going to find it, that a full surrender meant you don't get to ask questions.
You say yes.
You don't say, I'm working on surrendering. You either surrender or you don't. It's like the
Absolutely.
yes show, right?
Yep, exactly.
You really have to do it.
Yep.
You have to be all in.
Yep.
So I decide I'm going to do it. And sure enough, within days you text me. I move out of this home with this toxic relationship.
Yep.
Made no sense financially for me to do anything.
Yep.
And I just decided to be the yes girl. If I was prompted, I was going to do it. So lo and behold, I end up there, and I walk into this Genshai family, and it was like, well, of course, here's the brothers and sisters I just hadn't met yet. I probably met them in a former life.
When I saw you, I was like, there's my sister.
It was this
magical.
awesome.
Yeah.
So we go through this wonderful retreat of, my intention was to ask the question, is it possible to love myself as much as I love everyone around me?
Yeah.
Can I give to myself what I always give to everyone else?
It's the hardest thing, isn't it?
Oh.
Yeah.
It's painfully hard. It's not just hard.
No, I know.
It's soul crushing. Like, people, use that phrase so lightly. Oh, just learn to love yourself.
No.
Oh, okay, let me
Well,
just
this
get
is
right
why
on
we
that.
had, 25, 30 people there, because you got to have that support system too.
And everybody was there thinking the exact same thing, and they wanted the same self-love and to figure out how to do that on whatever that looked like for them. And the fact that everyone's in the same room, longing for the same thing and creating this, I always tell people there's no way to describe what happens.
Yeah.
It's just something you have to do. And when I felt, long story short, this purple, yellow, beautiful light of hugging, what I learned was really my source of myself. I knew I could never undo what I just got. It would be so wrong, as if somebody tapped you and you turned around. You can't turn around and go back without strongly knowing you're on the wrong path.
Exactly.
So I no longer could go back to anything that not only didn't serve me, but wouldn't allow me to progress forward in my life.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even finish my book up until that point.
Yeah.
I had so many blocks.
Yeah.
And I drove home from that retreat. I went to the writer's retreat. I finished my book.
Yeah.
Closed my laptop.
Everybody cheering you on, supporting you. Amazing.
Moved my daughter and I into this condo, and I never looked back. And now it's just about making all those decisions that continue me down. Does this bring me closer to loving myself all the time?
Yeah.
Does this progress me in my goals in my life that are all positive?
Yeah.
Does this bring me closer to my source? If those answers are no, the simple answer for me is no.
Yeah.
I don't even question it. And I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not okay with being no girl.
Yeah.
That was hard for me.
Yeah.
But not now.
Yeah.
Now it's very simple.
Yeah, you have to honor yourself.
Yeah. And then you honor others. It's not, and it's not the be selfish thing. It's the self-care love.
Yeah. I mean,
It's so good.
And I said this at the retreat. It's like the golden rule is flawed. Love thy neighbor as thyself, right?
Very much so.
Well, if you don't love yourself, how do you love your neighbor? It's a facade. You're putting on a show for them. So we have to find that self-love.
Yeah.
So
I think you're trying to love them because you're working really hard on loving yourself, but
Yeah.
you don't know how to make the connection. And you think the more I give, the more I'm going to give. And you don't.
No.
You don't. To truly give yourself a big hug and say, after you write your story, I'm pretty awesome, and I did that, and good job, 7 and 8 and 9-year-old little girl.
Yeah.
You're awesome, and you did a really good job.
Yep.
And there's just no more self-love than to tell the Lance that fell down, or the Lance that was in the car accident, or the Lance that got out of a marriage, good job, buddy. You did a really good job at that time
Yeah.
with everything you knew.
With some of the hardest decisions of your life.
Yeah.
When you make those pivotal points, right?
Yeah.
Was meeting Rick and the Christmas box. Tell me about that. Like 23, right?
Yeah, so I was 21, getting ready to turn 22,
Yeah.
and I met Richard Evans, and he'd just written the book. He needed an assistant. I was getting laid off from a job and needed a job, and I started working for him.
Yeah.
And 2.5 years in, he and his wife Carrie decided they wanted to give back, but they weren't sure how. But
Yeah.
the book, The Christmas Box, is based on the loss of a child.
Yep.
So we knew it needed to be child-centric.
Mm-hmm.
So we just held a child welfare symposium at the University of Utah. And at the time, Utah was one of 9 states being sued by the National Center for Youth Law in California for the mistreatment of children. We had kids dying in the foster care
Ironically.
system. And ironically, Richard and his wife came into millions of dollars, and there just came this correlation of, you know what, we're hot potatoing children, we're moving them. To answer your question earlier, it was the way it was done is you moved a child every 6 months
Yeah.
because it was determined that if that child wasn't going to be adopted and make a connection anyway, why would they stay long enough to form an attachment? That would be silly.
Yeah.
That would not be silly. And now we would not strive to do that.
Yeah.
You want people to make a connection. Whether I make a connection one day with you or you're my lifetime Lance friend,
Yeah.
it matters.
Exactly.
It teaches me to bond to you. It teaches me to love you. It teaches
Yeah.
me to love me. And now that's what we try to give for children. And so we launched the Christmas Box emergency shelters that serve the whole child, age 0 to 18. And it's not that the shelters is what makes them unique. We have lots of children's shelters in Utah.
Yeah, we do.
It's that it serves the child to age 18, and we keep brothers and sisters together. So obviously that's
Incredible.
my favorite part.
Exactly.
We keep 1,000 a year together,
Mm-hmm.
till they get to be placed together and not separated.
Wow.
So,
And tell the listeners the success that you guys have
so
had
we're
with the
27 years strong this year,
Yeah.
and we've served over 145,000 children.
which would fill
Madison Square Garden 6.5
Yeah, I
times.
read that. I'm like,
It's pretty. It's a lot to
Unbelievable.
get your head around. And I remember when we started the organization, Richard and I was like, wouldn't it be cool if this was the one job you like got to quit because there were no more abused children.
Yes.
But unfortunately, every year the need is bigger.
yeah.
We get more older children because they're harder to place.
Mm-hmm.
We get larger behavioral issues. We get more children that are on mood management, we call it, as a system.
Yeah.
And it's just a constant, continual struggle. So what can we do? We get to fill in really big gaps to make them have the best life they can while they're with us.
Mm-hmm.
We get to teach them that every child deserves a childhood.
Yeah. And what an incredible
huge.
organization. I was at the groundbreaking.
Yeah, you've been involved from the beginning.
Yeah. My mom has been
Your
president
mom,
of
we
the
wouldn't even have
International.
we wouldn't even have gotten off the ground without your mom. She raised our first dollar, and she helped me raise more than $1.5 million when we opened.
It's incredible.
And it's been a great journey.
Well, it's incredible watching two incredibly powerful women in my life.
I love her.
Light
Mom.
and light and just
I love her. Best mentor, best friend, one of the best
as mine
women
as
I
well.
know.
So
I know.
it's
Same.
beautiful. Hey, we have
Go
something.
Judy.
So many things in common, Celeste. I love it. Well, I mean, everybody needs to get a copy of this for sure, to be aware of what's going on. But what would you tell somebody that's in the system that is lucky enough to either read your book, hear this podcast, and has that last glimpse of hope? Like, what would you, like, directly speak to that girl or that little boy that is sitting in the same situation? What would you tell them?
When we have a 7, 8, or 9-year-old, those big ages for me, come to the shelters and I get to talk to them. It's very hard, for sure. It's very triggering in many ways. But if I have a chance to talk to them and I can ground and I can get on my knees to their level and say, to be really frank and not beat around the bush, I usually simply tell them, I understand that it sucks for you right now. Quite frankly, I know this is hard. And this is a really hard time in your life. And I tell them what my dad told me, that most children never get to hear from their biological parents, which is nothing that you're going through was caused by you.
Yeah.
None of it was your fault. You don't deserve any of it. And right now, you probably feel really small because all these decisions are being made for you that you don't understand, and they're hard and they're crazy. But there gets to come a time when none of these people make these decisions for you, and you only get to make your own.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it is not scary. It's the most empowering thing to get to that place one day and say, wow, I get to make good choices. I get to make healthy relationships in my life. I get to have positive people in my life. I get to do what I want to do in my life. And all these people don't control that for you anymore. You get that power inside, and you have to love yourself first.
Yeah.
I tell every one of them now, and I never would have told them that a year ago.
And they have to hear that.
I wouldn't have added that part.
Right? They have to hear that from somebody
Yeah.
that's been through it.
And I'm like, is it weird that I was your age
Yeah.
and I would have been in this house, but there wasn't one. And all these people here, we all love you. We're here because you're here. And the blankets that you get and the stuffed animals that you get and all the new things you get are all given to you by people you've never met. How awesome is
Just
that?
unconditional love.
Can you even believe that you're worth that?
It's amazing.
And if they think you're worth it, you better think you're worth it.
Wow. Powerful.
And I do get to do that, and I cry every time, and usually they're crying, and it's a whole thing. But it's remarkably healing. It's definitely a reminder that
Sacred souls, huh?
yeah, you get to relate to that person, but I also think they just get told what people think they want to hear, which is it's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay today.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you want, like, to be a 15-year-old boy who's removed from their home on a Friday night and you get brought to, it's a beautiful place, but it's still a shelter.
Yeah. Yep.
You're still taken away from everything you know. Yeah. And so we're like, hey man, I know this is uncool, but what would you like for your birthday? Great. Go get those gift cards. My team, make that happen. What else would you like? Oh, you want a root beer float party? Go get some supplies. Yeah. How about we light this house up because we've had a donor donate the lights permanently on the house. What are your very favorite colors? And we light the house and we run the favorite colors. His was purple.
That's awesome.
And it's like, it's the best we can do. I can't change anything that's happened to you, but I can promise you that anything I can do for you today to give you a better trajectory, I will move mountains to make that happen for you.
The Christmas box house has been a true gift to the state. Everywhere you guys are doing this.
Yeah, and matter of fact, the former director that retired last year endorsed the book, which was super special for me.
Wow.
To have somebody that was in the system as a child welfare advocate for 25 years say, the story is remarkable and I want to get behind you any way I can, was just super, super great. She's been an advocate for almost 30 years for children. And so.
Well, and I love the book because it brings awareness to something that people don't want to know.
Well, most people, you know, our children are in they're confidential because they're in state custody. So you can go donate to our shelter and not meet one child you're going to give to.
Yeah.
So the book will glean some insight for sure into what they're going through and what they feel. Yeah. And my hope is it makes people have a connection to those kids they give to that they never get to meet.
So what message of self-love would you tell them? Like what is the greatest?
Kids?
Yeah. What do they need to hear?
Well, first of all, when I ask even an adult, not even a child, do you love yourself? Like, you ever asked somebody that question straight up?
Well, I asked you guys
like
at
you'll
the
say
retreat, didn't I?
You should love yourself, right?
What did I say?
But you'll ask us, do you love yourself?
Do you truly, authentically, or have you ever asked yourself if you truly, authentically love yourself?
And most people just sit there. They don't even know what to say.
It's like a blank stare. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. It's so oddly uncomfortable. So when I ask the kids, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Do you love yourself?
Yeah.
Usually they don't respond.
It depends on the day, honestly. Right?
Because we're designed to have conditions.
Yeah, exactly.
You can love yourself if all these things get done today. You can love yourself if you make this much money. You can love yourself if you
have succeeded at this.
All you have to do is show up.
Yeah. You
wake up, you love yourself. So when I ask the kids if they love themselves and they don't answer, I ask them if they feel they deserve to be loved. And some say no.
Boy, that's a
whole other starting place. That's a whole other how do you deserve?
Am I worthy?
Do you deserve to be loved?
Wow.
And then if they say no, I ask them if they have a sibling there, would you tell your sister she deserves to be loved? Yeah. You know, they're like happy, especially if they're older.
Yeah.
I tell my sister all the time.
Yeah.
So why does your sister get to be loved, but you don't get to be loved? What makes her so special?
Wow.
Well, she's my sister.
Yeah.
That's right. All she has to do, buddy, is show up and be her.
Exactly.
And she gets to be loved.
Yeah.
Isn't that awesome? Well, that means all you have to do is show up. That's right. And you get to be loved. Yeah. And they're usually like, oh, it's like they make kind of this connection, like, oh, I'm sane. I'm sane. And I'm like, we're all human. We all get the same thing. We all wake up every day and actually get the same right as the person next to us.
No, my mom, I mean,
it's crazy.
Luckily, she was a part of this from the beginning, but every time we would go through something, she would say, and we were down and we were depressed or something, she said, go help someone. Yeah. Like you just said to the one sister to the other one, like, go help somebody. Get in charity mode, get out of yourself so you can get back to yourself.
Yeah, you can't not love yourself when you're in those spaces. So I do agree. I think the more you do it. So for Mother's Day, my birthday, and Christmas, I tell my children, never get me a gift. Unless you decide to home make something, whole other story. Write me a note, great. Don't go buy me something. I want the gift of time, and I want the gift of service. Yeah. And that's what we always do together, because I don't want stuff. I don't want their things, and I don't want them to think that they get me something they think I want, that's going to enlighten my day and make me feel so great. It isn't. I want them to spend an uninterrupted day all day long, and I want them to go do a service project with me.
Yeah, I love that.
That's it. I mean,
Mine was triggered 13 years ago, and you know that story.
Yeah.
You know, when I was going through a huge transition, and then I was introduced to Genshai. To never treat anyone in a manner of making them feel small, including myself. That's when the switch hit, and I was like, have I ever truly loved myself?
Yeah.
And I've let everybody's perception gear me to where I thought I needed to be until I made the shift and made that decision.
So the You Matter bracelet for me
I love
is
that.
symbolic of the Genshai coin.
Yep.
It's, the message is that you matter. And so
Absolutely.
I always ask people, you don't have to wear this, you don't even have to keep it, but
Yeah.
will you take it and will you just give it to somebody, preferably today,
Yes.
and just tell them that they
And you have
matter.
extras. I'm giving a
I have
couple
so
of them
many.
out today.
I printed 1,000, so
We're done.
it's good.
We're spreading love in Genshai.
I've done the experiment of going downtown and handing it out to random people on the street.
How was it received?
I was just, at first it's a weird, like, and I'm like, I know you think it's one of those weird rubber bracelets, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, it's got my website on it, and it's got a sunflower because that's for me.
Yeah, I love
But
sunflower.
this part,
One of my favorite flowers.
well, yeah, I mean, obviously
And
it's
they
a
grow
foster
anywhere.
child. That's why.
And they're
That's
so
why
beautiful.
it grows in the hardest dirt.
I know, I love it.
Drive down the freeway, what do you see?
And
A sunflower.
just like us having the lotus in Genshai,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
There's so much.
So when I give it to him, at first there's a weird, what do you want from me look?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want anything from you. I
You
just want
matter.
you to know, if no one else tells you today, you matter, because guaranteed, for me, it's easy to relate to, because if I go to the homeless shelter or the food bank or the YWCA, like most programs I can go to and I can say I was here as a child.
Yeah.
It's maybe been renovated, but
Mhm.
I stayed here.
Yep.
And I know what it's like to be here, and I can still say that you matter
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
because I was here. So it's not like I don't know, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Well, I love you.
thank you for
and
reading
I'm
my book.
so proud of you. Like,
Thank you.
I mean, we've known each other for
28 years.
yeah, and reading this book, man, I just have so much more love and respect for you. So, everybody in our Genshai family, go and pick up this book, meet Celeste, and be a part of this. And how do people get involved with the Christmas box?
thechristmasbox.org. We have so much good stuff on there. We have, I feel like everybody wants to give, they just don't always know how. So we provide, you know, whether somebody wants to give monetarily, or they want to donate off our wish list, or they want to volunteer. I always say, if those three things don't work for you, if you could just share.
Yeah.
It's the one value of social media that is actually very useful, is to share positive love and
So
positive messages.
christmasbox.org
Yeah.
or genshai.com. We'll do 100% pass through. Just put Christmas box on it, and we want to help them participate as much as we can with getting this out to the world. And when I was pulling in for the podcast, the billboard right on the freeway by 5400 South, I'm like,
You're
I'm
like,
30
that's
minutes away.
her.
There it is.
Wait till you see yourself being put up on a billboard. I'm telling you.
It's pretty surreal, isn't
It,
it?
yeah.
And then you know it's real.
It's crazy.
You know it's real,
crazy.
right?
Yeah.
It's out there.
All
So
of a sudden, there it is, and you're like, wow. I went from her to this. I mean, it is quite a contrast.
it's
for
remarkable.
sure.
It's remarkable.
Yeah, if you knew her then, yeah, you probably wouldn't think she'd be here today. And that's really the beauty of stories,
Yeah.
right? Is you get to
Exactly.
share where people can
Yeah.
get to. So
Well, you're one of my biggest mentors and heroes. So everybody, get involved in this, and our Genshai family is going to help champion this, and donate, and let's be a part of this incredible movement in Genshai. Go to genshai.com or christmasbox.org and donate, and let's create a revolution so she can quit her job.
she doesn't want to quit her job.
Well, you won't have a job if all these kids are taken care of, right?
Well, yeah, I know. You're right.
We can go spread self-love everywhere.
We can keep building things in other countries.
Let's do it.
Okay, perfect.
Let's do it. All right. Well, thanks for being on this podcast, everyone. We love you. And till the next Giving Genshai podcast.